washing machine. Happy as a So good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of Planning and Highways Committee of Thatcham Town Council, today being the 12th of March 2024. And this meeting is being recorded for publication on the Thatcham Town Council YouTube channel. So before we start on the agenda, I was going to suggest, as we have members of the public here for this specific item, that we move the planning application for 3 Loundyes Close to the first application that we'll deal with. I think we can deal with the other bits pretty quickly. So moving on to agenda item 1. Adam Clark.
No apologies received, Chairman.
Thank you. So agenda item 2, declarations of interest. You might want to, in respect of the local plan examination.
Yeah, about matters of 9. I've read what you've done and it looks okay to me.
So just,
I mean, it's not that I'm
just to clarify, I think you're doing that as a resident of Crookham Park, because that is specifically mentioned in one of the representations on the local plan examination.
Where they were to sell it.
Yeah.
Yes. And would they find somewhere for us homeless people to live?
And Councillor Pemberton.
Yeah, Chairman, apparently we're looking at an amended plan of the fishing chalets down at Hambridge Lake,
Right.
which may or may not come before Eastern area planning.
Right.
So if we're voting on the meeting tonight, I should probably say.
I should also perhaps mention that I'm a resident of Henwick Lane, though some distance away from number 7. Okay, so with that, we move on to the minutes of the last meeting, which are quite long, but largely related to planning applications. So any comments on the minutes of the last meeting on the 13th of February? No one seeking the floor, so I propose that we what's the wording that we use here? Minutes. That we read and confirm as accurate these minutes. I propose that from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McCann, and those in favour of that. Thank you very much. So moving on to quickly, any matters arising, feedback on items. Could I just, as it's important, just ask you to confirm that the representations that we improved at that meeting have been sent to the inspector?
Yes, they have, Chairman.
Thank you. So, and we'll move on, we'll come back to phase 2 of representations later in the meeting. So moving on to 3 Loundyes Close and hand over to Joyce.
So members may recall at the last meeting an application for an extension to the property at 3 Loundyes Close. The comments of the committee was to object to the application on grounds of overdevelopment, particularly in regard to extending to the boundary of the neighbouring property at number 5 and lack of subservience of extension. Amended plans have been submitted and this is the original plan. So this was the extension and alterations to the side of the property, and this extension to the rear, and this is where it was up to the property boundary. The amendment is to move the extension over, so you can see it's now away from the boundary. It's almost being picked up and moved to the right as we look at this this diagram here. The residents at number 5, who are actually here in the chamber this evening, have reiterated their objection to the amended plan on the same grounds as the original application.
Okay, is the elevation looking at the front, because of the question of subservience, is that still?
There's no difference to the front
Okay.
of the property.
Okay. So thank you. So probably sufficiently recent, we can probably remember that one. Any comments from councillors? Councillor Pemberton.
Yeah, keep it really brief. The subservience issue has not been addressed. Therefore, we should probably resolve to object to it.
And indeed, it's still right up to the boundary where the garage currently is. Not quite, we didn't work out quite what the structure would be on that boundary, did we, last time, I think? there wasn't any detail about what the wall would be on that boundary. So any further comments from councillors? We have members of the public on this topic? Would you like to speak to the committee? Okay, if you don't, that's fine. If you don't want to, if you're just here to observe, thank you for coming. So I think can I take that from Councillor Pemberton as a proposal that we resolve to object again?
That's a proposal from me, Chair.
We have a seconder for that. I think Councillor McCann was slightly ahead. So, I think depends on what height I measure the hand raised. So in that case, those in favour of that motion. Thank you very much. And I suppose we need to agree the grounds that the subservience and the issue of the boundary is it has not changed where the where the site of the present garage is. Yeah.
It's only the matter of loss of light. Does that not come into it at all?
Well, that will be the same as before. So I think the point is we're commenting on the changes. So I think that the comment is that our other comments still stand. Yeah. So, but normally that would be the case anyway. We'll say it explicitly. So thank you very much for your interest, and
Very much.
you're posted, and you will wait with interest. The planning department is not unduly speedy at the moment.
No.
So okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So moving back to I guess we go back to 4 Mallards Reach. I'm not quite sure if that drawing quite complies with the guidance on planning plans. But I don't think the walls are intended to be wavy.
Good.
I thought it's digital.
Sorry?
I thought all plans had to be digitalised now.
I think you can import them digitally. They have to be visible digitally, but I think you can draw them and scan them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, okay.
So Mallards Reach is a cul-de-sac backing on to properties on Station Road. It's this property here, so up in the top corner of the cul-de-sac. It's a detached property. That's as best I can show you from this side, but if I go round onto Station Road, you'll get a view. It's this property here. So you can see it backs onto the car parking for this property here. So the proposal is for 2 Velux roof lights to the front of the building and a full width dormer across here. It's to create an ensuite bedroom in the roof space. There are roof lights on a number of neighbouring properties, but no similar dormers.
Including the one in the foreground of that shop there, yes.
So you can see several have roof lights, but there's no other dormers in the area. So because of the property at the rear, there's limited impact of overlooking. And just have the design. So that's the original. And here's the dormer on the rear and 2 roof lights on front.
Any comments? See people looking quizzically.
No objection.
I was going to say, I would say that if I were to look at that from that distance and see it, I wouldn't necessarily know that it had been extended.
No.
Or whether it was just a feature of the original design.
Just for context on Station Road where we are.
Yeah.
Kennet School, just so you know.
Yeah.
Birdwood.
Yes.
It would seem difficult to object against it, especially if they're saying that you can actually use your roof space. Then to turn around and say, but it has this shape has to be the slight shape of a roof. It just seems a bit.
Yeah. So, and I think
counterintuitive.
I think as I say, the impact of overlooking car parking spaces is quite limited. fact, it might be a benefit, security point of view. So I think looking at your faces, I would just propose from the chair that we make no objection to this application. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Lunn, and those in favour of no objections. Thank you very much. We then move on to the second of the of these.
Actually printed off the design and access statement. If you want to pass them down. Thank you. Okay, so this is property number 10 here, and the proposal is to construct a joining property here in this area, so demolition of this single-storey side extension. This road here goes down to garage parking. If we look at this one, you can see it's this so this is the existing property, and then the proposed property will go in here. As you can see, it's quite a sizable rear garden, and that will be split between the two properties. So for the existing property, it's demolition of this utility and toilet stroke shower room. Construction of a single-storey extension across the width of the property, plus first floor extension above a part of the proposed ground floor extension, and a loft conversion to provide an ensuite bedroom, increasing from currently a 3-bed property to a 4. So you can have a look at that first. So this is the existing property from the front, and this is the proposed new dwelling, which is a 3-bed property over 3 floors, because you can see on the rear here that the bedroom in the loft, and then, sorry, this is the new one. And then this is creating a bedroom in the loft space of the existing as well. There will be an alleyway. This here is an alleyway for both properties to access the rear gardens. Car parking for vehicles, which you can see here. This is the 2 for the new property and 2 for the existing. It's a shared driveway. Limited impact of overlooking. And as I say, the adjacent road is for garage access.
The dreaded exfolium pipe that raises its ugly head again. That's the oil pipeline that causes a nuisance across.
I'm not ready for that one yet.
So, just comment here, because I know the area well, that don't think on Westfield Road, but on neighbouring roads, there are other properties where there are 3 in a row with the passageway. So that concept is established in the general area.
Yeah, so you can see it's quite a mixture of.
In fact, looking further down that one, some of those might be, that one with 3 chimneys suggests it might be a block of 3, which might well have a passageway. Okay. Comments?
Yeah, on a clarification if you can. So the oil pipe, I don't know that it's.
It's irrelevant for this. It just raises its ugly head across the whole of Thatcham.
Where do you know where it runs?
Yeah, roughly speaking, yeah.
What, diagonally across the site?
And you can see it's on that plan. It's on the.
Well, that's it then.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's not.
Yeah.
That's not actually where.
So it won't be built on anyway.
No.
It's fine.
Okay.
I can't see.
Was there any comment from Exfolium in this application?
No.
Okay, there might be. Now, just thinking of that because it'd be interesting other places where we would like to put car parking on top of the pipeline, which would be interesting. So, any comments on this one? Obviously, it's increase in density significant, but the starting baseline is a very generous housing density. So, would someone like to propose?
Yeah,
I think it-
really, it doesn't seem to be interfering with anything
Yeah.
else, you know, and why?
So you're proposing no objection.
I will propose no objection.
We have a second there,
No,
councillor
stop.
Pemberton, and those in favour of no objection, I think that's everybody, that's unanimous. So we move on to Hambridge Lake again. We need to put an agenda item on for Hambridge Lake.
Okay, so just again to familiarise, it's located on the junction of London Road and Hambridge Road. So this was the application, the design, site design that was considered at the last meeting. And you can see this chalet position here. You'll see from the application that it's to relocate one of the fishing chalets, so not opposite the proposed access. So this one has been moved up here. And there you go. So that one there was here and it's been moved up here.
Okay. So could I suggest, I see sort of a puzzlement on people. Given the grounds to which we objected last time, I don't think the precise location of that particular chalet was one of our grounds for objection. So can I suggest that there is no material change to our previous grounds for objection? Councillor Watts has seconded that. So all those in favour of maintaining our objection?
Yes.
Thank you. A new set of photographs that we've got there.
Yes.
Yes. It's an interesting perspective on that body of water. It's not quite how it looks at the moment.
All right, how's that?
Interesting point there that the River Kennet to the south there is actually common land. In terms of the legal position, it may be the case that the public is entitled to be there, and therefore that is a view, even though it'd be quite difficult to walk there. So moving on.
Clark, would you mind noting as well that I abstained on that vote?
Which is the closest river?
Sorry,
Lambourne or
it's the Kennet, it's the Kennet's at the bottom.
Kennet's?
Yeah, so Kennet, Lambourne joins, good question, just go up slightly, let's do that.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So moving on, so there were, in accordance with the town council policy, we don't normally consider these, but I've asked that we consider 7 Henwick Lane. This is a complicated application because of the nature. Would you like me to introduce this one? Yes, okay. So this is a site for which there was an application for a substantial extension. It's currently a bungalow, and the extension was to add what amounts to a second floor and extending the floor area as well. And in conjunction with that, a much higher fence was installed, and they're proposing to move the location of the parking. This is a corner plot. So the reason I mention that is that the drawings that you'll probably see don't reflect the drawings of the proposal for this application is dealing with the parking and the fence being retrospected. But it shows that the plan shows the house as approved and not the house as it currently exists, because the extension hasn't been built yet, or the construction hasn't taken place. So the photographs that you may see are not in accordance with the plans for these particular
Overlapping reasons.
But yeah, so that is the house. It's on the corner of Henwick Lane and Barfield Road. It's a bungalow, as you can see. And it previously had that brick wall running around the boundary, and this fence has been constructed, and it goes along to the end and then along the side, which is at the frontage of the neighbouring house. And it is concrete posts with UPVC, I assume. It's an artificial material. And as the plan will show, they propose to demolish the wall, the diagonal, I think what remains of the wall on Barfield Road plus the diagonal, for car parking. And as the size of the property is expanded, I think it's 3 at the moment, but it's going up to 5 bedrooms. The previous application, we commented no objection, provided that the highways were satisfied.
Yeah.
Highways were sceptical, but I suspect that the gate, so there's extra parking at the front, assuming that the access is permitted on the corner. But that gate, I think also on the side where you can see the front of the vehicle, probably obstructs the access to where the original parking spaces were. So that is the nature. I think the garage there, you will see, so the garage will be demolished. Do you have a plan as well of the proposed plan? It's site, so I think it's called construction site plan. It's I recall. Right, so you can see there you've got this paved area in the corner of the property, the bottom left on the corner. And you've got the gates opening and what appears to be a patio where there was originally going to be parking spaces. So given that those gates have to open, it's unclear how many parking spaces there will be available behind the gates, because you can't actually turn, I don't think. So do you have the highways comment on the previous application up?
No.
I can probably. Highways. So what highways said, it's so they seeks to add 2 bedrooms to make it a 5-bed property. The access to the driveway is to be widened and the driveway extended, which would accommodate 4 times driveway spaces, 2.4 by 4.8 metres. So if we go back to that plan, so the highways is of the view that this size of house requires 4 parking spaces, which would mean 2 at the 2 at the side, 2 in that corner plot, assuming that they're given access, and 2 behind the gate, I assume.
Would you be kind enough to put up the construction plan? Perfect.
Yeah.
So are you saying that?
Well, of course, firstly, there are no, unlike unusually, this plan does not say where they expect the parking spaces to be. But I'm assuming that one can get 2 cars in the front, given the diagonal. And I'm not sure which way they're parked, because I don't think they can, if you were to expand, I think the width between the house and the road at the bottom and or the boundary at the bottom is not quite long enough for a larger car. It's certainly not 4.8 long. So and then as far as I can see, it's only really possible to get one car behind behind those gates.
Yeah, I mean, they could put sliding gates.
The point is they're already there.
Yeah.
It's retrospective.
Yeah.
So we're considering on the basis of this.
Okay.
So I suggest that there are two points that we might want to raise. The one is about the fence itself, and the second one is about the parking, which would probably be a flag, rather than us making a definitive comment, a flag to highways. Oh, the other thing to say is, do you have the bottom photograph neighbour fence and hedges also material? So this is looking on the property the other side. If you can zoom out. So there is already about the property, the boundary goes to you've got a fence with a hedge there, but that's a rather more weathered, it's a wooden fence, so it doesn't have quite the stark a view. And it's historic as well. I think that actually predates the houses behind it. It was there when that house was. There are 2 houses built on the plot of one, and I'm pretty sure the hedge was there from that time. So, any comments?
I was more confused about where they're going to put the other 2.
Yes.
Yes.
Because if you're saying they're going to go where that street sign is and they're going to access there, we have refused lots of applications because they're far too close. There's a telegraph pole to the left-hand side, which means the only way they're going to get in is further up that road to the left side of the tele and then come in.
Right.
So
So if we break it down and say on the access point,
Yeah.
so the parking, we express our concerns to, I think we express our concerns to Highways,
Yeah.
flagging that it is on a corner plot. Its access would be on the corner. It's unclear on which the orientation of the cars. And there is a street light which would obstruct it, and also there may not be sufficient length for them to access. And the gates that are presently
Hang
part
on
of
a
it.
minute, Chair.
So yeah,
Yeah,
Street, right.
yeah.
the street light, and then there's a telephone.
Well, so it's a
So
street.
we've got the access is on a corner, unclear of the orientation of cars, there was a street light and what?
Obstructing it.
One telephone.
The telegraph pole is actually beyond. It's not. It's not.
Or is
It
it
won't
not on
obstruct.
there? Okay.
It's
Oh, it's not outside their fences.
it's outside their fence, but it's also further along where the wall will stay.
Yeah.
So if we object on those grounds,
Yes.
so moving back to the,
There is, of course, ways you can get around that kind of stuff, but
Oh, yeah.
I mean, but it's not for us to give them suggestions.
yeah. So the point is we express those concerns and suggest to Highways that a plan showing the locations of the four parking spaces that they require is provided.
Yeah, so it's got to have 4 parking spaces.
That's what Highways have deemed. There is a council policy on the number of parking spaces against the size of the property. I think also, in fact, if you go back to the plan, can you go back to the elevation? This is complicated because if you look at the elevation for the,
Up one?
yeah, and the proposed. So have you got another, is there a different elevation plan?
Existing.
Yeah, try that. Because, no, it's not that. There's a construction site, and I haven't tried that. Existing and proposed south elevation, see what that says. The reason I raise it is that I think that the sloping roof that you can see behind the wall is in fact a garage, which would be obstructed by the parking spaces. So if you park outwards, so anyway, so I think generally speaking, I think we're saying that we've made those points in respect of the access and the parking. So move on to the second possible issue, which is the fence. Which, as I say, is I'm not. It has actually progressed a bit since then. I think there's a half height going to one more unit.
The only issue I would have about the fence is that if a person's coming up to a corner and you end up with a 6-foot high fence, your instincts are normally to roll forward to look around it. Whereas a lower wall, you can see over the top of it, which, you know.
That's far enough back for, it's behind, it's, the fence is behind the sight line from the house anyway, so. Yeah.
You know the area better than I do.
Yeah. So does anybody have, so I was, thought the fence was somewhat unsightly. Anybody else?
Unfortunately, ugly is not a planning issue, is it?
It doesn't have to fit in with it.
Well, it's, you can say in keeping with the property and if I was to propose that we object on that ground, would there be a seconder? I see no one raising their hand, so we will not, so that proposal falls. So we'll object on the first grounds that we've just concluded, and we will not comment on the.
Is there an issue with the height?
It's
An issue with the height?
no, because if you're asking for planning permission, that's okay. So the rule is 1 metre on a boundary of a highway, road, and 2 metres elsewhere. But this is 2 metres and it's on the boundary of a road, so but that's consistent with.
Stop people jumping over your back garden sort of stuff.
Okay, so I think we've agreed to object on those parking and highway grounds, but decided not to comment on, so there's no comment needed on the fence itself. So thank you. I think that concludes that item. Extra bit. So we move on to decision notices.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
About the land opposite Cook and Park, what are they going to be storing?
Well, this is at the moment, this is an application to determine if prior approval is needed.
Okay.
So that
we
is.
don't really know now.
So what they may say, but the point is, at the moment, it is a technical question to the council And the council will either, West Berkshire Council, the council will either say, this is permitted development, in which case, they can do it, or they'll say you need to submit a full application, in which case we will consider it. But if you look at that application, put that application in the portal, it'll probably tell you more than we know. But there's no point in us considering it because it is at the moment, it's a
What
legal.
does B8 mean?
B8 is, light industrial, I think. But it's a very broad definition.
Yeah. Right opposite, I think.
Anyway, so the point is that where you can,
The few of us.
yeah. So anyway, if you look at, if you put that, if you go to the council's planning portal and put that application, that reference number in, you will be able to see the full details of what they're asking, because
Very much.
it has to tell the council enough information for them to decide.
Yeah, whether they need.
Yeah. So, thank you. So we'll move on to decision notices then.
So majority weren't considered by committee, and as you can see, they were all approved. The Memorial Playing Field Flood Alleviation Scheme, that has been approved with conditions, and there are a number of
21, I think. Yeah.
Excellent.
So, if you can, I take over there. So just to say that the meeting of Eastern Area, this was referred to Eastern Area Planning, met, if I recall, last Wednesday. It was a long meeting. This was the shorter, this took more than an hour and was the shorter of the two applications considered. The other one being the Gypsy and Traveller site at Four Houses Corner. I will tell you the history afterwards. I spoke on behalf of the town council, and basically, if you recall, we supported the principle, but had a number of concerns. Some of those concerns were related to the fact we hadn't been notified as landowner, and they're outside of the scope of the planning meeting. The comments which we had to make as objections on planning grounds have all been resolved by conditions. So I therefore said that we were therefore in a position to support it without reservations. And after a lengthy discussion and slight modification of one of the conditions, as I said, it is approved, and there are a large number of conditions related to the complexity of the site and ensuring that the residents are inconvenienced as little as possible while it's constructed, and that everything is restored as much as can be afterwards, basically. It's a summary of all of that. And the first step is taking place this week, where the inspection to verify that the trees that need to be removed can be removed in accordance with ecological considerations, and that meeting's either today or tomorrow. To make sure it happens before the birds start nesting.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of statutory period when they're deemed to start nesting, though I suspect that the birds aren't aware and might this.
How did they get notice?
This spring they might have. Anyway, so that one has been approved and work is progressing, and no doubt we shall see it in person as we arrive for future meetings. So thank you. West Berkshire Local Plan examination. So,
Never heard of it.
so for the benefit of people watching, this is a long-standing issue. If I just get the most recent parts, that the West Berkshire Council did a Regulation 19 consultation at the beginning of 2023, and the council submitted extensive comments to that. The council submitted that to the inspector. And the inspector started by asking quite a large number of questions to West Berkshire Council, which they've answered. And then he has put an even larger number of questions to all of the respondents to Regulation 19. And you'll recall at our last meeting, we approved our response to the first batch of those questions. The inspector's broken it down into two halves with two deadlines. And that first batch is largely to do with general and legal issues. So this batch covers a number of things. The first and most important of them is 23 questions relating to North East Thatcham. And I would say, without any strong evidence, but a good suspicion, that the fact that there are so many questions means that the inspector is already suspicious about the proposal. So I have written quite a lengthy response, which I can answer any questions. Sorry that you didn't quite get it with the agenda, but it took longer than expected. And then I discovered when I proofread it that I'd misunderstood one of the questions, so I had to rewrite it. Would anyone like to ask any questions about the 23? Well, we didn't respond to quite all of those questions. So you'll see it's written in sort of somewhat legal language because that is what the inspector is. The inspector is basically determining whether the plan is sound, complied with legal requirements and is sound as defined in the planning policy.
First of all, I would like to express my thanks as a member for your diligence and the amount of effort, time and work that is taken to construct such a detailed response. I don't want to go into any specific because it's not that sort of meeting. Yeah. But I was more trying to get a feeling. How do you think our input will have on the actual inspectorate? That's really what we're trying to get.
Yes. Okay. So the first set of questions, he was asking whether the plan complied with the duty to cooperate and statement of community involvement. And we provided what I think is quite substantial evidence that the council had not done so. But I cannot tell what the threshold is that the inspector will apply. But I think it carries significant weight with the inspector. The comments on, assuming, of course, the local plan examination might stop at that point if the inspector decides that certain criteria are not met, in which case my work for the rest of it will have been not necessary. But then we move on to the question on North East Thatcham. And we've asking quite a large number of questions about the soundness of the policy. We've obviously been swayed not only by the comments that we made at Regulation 19, but the comments I suspect that were made by certain developers. And so he's asking questions about the number of houses that can be accommodated. And one of the comments that I made is that there's no evidence, and he's asking, can the site support more than the 1,500 which is in the current plan? And the point that I made with based on evidence is that there's in fact no evidence to support it can even support 1,500 houses, because the key study that should have given that information, the consultants were explicitly instructed not to divide the site up into different parts and consider them separately, which would enable them to say that some parts are suitable and some are unsuitable. So that policy, that study, which should be a key part of the evidence base of the viability of the site, is deficient. And there are a number of other points like that. So the inspector will then consider whether the plan can be, so the inspector will have first consider what the capacity of the site is. And the other key point is about the lack of infrastructure. So we're quite emphasised in a number of ways the lack of infrastructure. So the inspector will decide whether that policy is capable of being made sound. If it does, there is a complicated process by which the council makes modifications to do so. And what I have tried to do is to steer the inspector to give guidance on what they should do, particularly remedying the lack of infrastructure, considering the size and so on, and taking into account the fact that there may be more brownfield sites available than was originally suggested. So it basically trying to steer, should it proceed in that direction, try to steer the further work in such a way which will improve the site from the benefit for the perspective of Thatcham and its residents. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, because that's what we're trying to do. Yeah, and I would say again that having seen the specific questions that the inspector is asking, these are based on specific things that he has found from his reading of the documentation and from things that previous respondents, including ourselves, have said. And so we've elaborated on what we said previously in response to that specific question. I would say in general, I have been involved in 2 planning inquiries and I've seen this so far. I have great admiration for the calibre, independence and perceptiveness of the inspectors. Thank you. So with that,
Let's wait for the decision.
the inspector needs it, but the inspector's job is only to consider whether the plan is sound.
Yes.
It is outside of his role to suggest improvement. So even if he thinks it's pretty poor, but it's legally sound, he has to let it go forward. Yeah, but again, there's a threshold, and I don't know what the threshold is that he'll apply. So because it's I suppose the person most knowledgeable about this, I propose from the chair that we agree to approve this and ask the clerk to submit this to the inspector in time for the deadline. Is that sufficient information for you? Excellent. This is matter 4, by the way, we're dealing with at the moment. Yeah. So, and that's matter 4 was the meat of what we're commenting on. So we then move on to matters 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 11. And these are things which are questions about other aspects of the policy, some of which have an impact on Thatcham. I shall deal with items 11 separately. So we do 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 at the moment. So 5 is relating to Sangleford, and the only comments we make there is that the approach should be the same for Sangleford and North East Thatcham. Lower away, we give the inspector information about the progress of that site because he specifically asked when will it be completed. He may get more definitive information from either the council developer, but I thought it'd be useful to help him in that way. Overall land supply, that's matter 7. That would be obviously that has an impact on the size of the North East Thatcham development. Matter 8. Energy efficiency, we made a comment on this, and he's asking, I suspect, at the instigation of developers as to whether the council's policy on net zero is justified. There's a reference there to a planning court, which we're not qualified to comment, so I don't in this response say what the decision was. But the decision was that this is West Oxfordshire. A planning inspector instructed that there should be no modifications to their plan, on the basis that the zero carbon policy went beyond planning guidance. And the council, NGO went to the Court of Appeal, and that decision was overturned. So the court decided that the inspector was not entitled to require that to be relaxed for various legal reasons. So, as I say, because we are not legally qualified, I don't make any comment about the substance of that, but obviously it is worth mentioning that it exists. You'll probably be aware of it anyway. And then we move on to matter 9, which is relating specifically, it covered other housing issues, of which the one that's relevant to us is park homes, because we have 2 park homes within the parish of Thatcham. And it's a question about what would happen if they were redeveloped for housing. So we get some local insight on that. So with those, I suggest that we treat that as a block. Anyone got any questions or comments on those policies? There's comments on those matters. Incidentally, the inspector has asked that it was a separate paper for each matter, because they'll be dealt with in separately in distinct sessions. Yeah. So I propose that we approve the responses that I've prepared for matters 5 to 9, and request the clerk to submit them to the inspector. Thank you. Seconder, Councillor McCann, and those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. So matter 11 deals with there's 2 aspects to this. This is the type of economic development. The first part is a site called ESO1, which you will know as the site of the proposed police logistics hub. And the policy as written envisages, it says that it covers a particular class of applications, but I suspect it was written with warehousing in mind. And it says it mentions a site, an area of interior surface area, which is much larger than the logistics hub would be. And I expect that's because it's high density warehousing. So basically this comment saying that we think we supported the logistics hub, we believe that it is consistent with the objectives of the policy, and therefore the policy should not appear to preclude it. No, well, of course be approved before then, but if it wasn't, we wouldn't want that sort of thing to be precluded by the policy. Yeah. The second half, there's a question about the hierarchy of town centres, which basically says that there is a major town centre, Thatcham and Hungerford are town centres, and then there are Hill and two others are minor community centres, that terminology. And the second, the point is that basically that it describes Thatcham as a town centre, which I think is a fairly straightforward thing to agree, unless you think we have the same level of shopping as Newbury. No. Okay. So, and then there are two questions which are specifically about the area of the town centre that is deemed to be the town centre area for economic development purposes, and the area of maybe shopping. And I suggested when this came to the full council meeting in the original paper that this is more appropriate for the town centre committee, because it's closely linked to the Hemingway report and things that we said to the Henwick report. So my suggestion for here is that to propose that we approve the material that's here before you, and we forward this on to the Town Centre Committee to consider their responses to the final two questions relating to the town centre and the shopping. And for your information, I have already prepared that. So that's for their consideration at their meeting next week. So the proposal that I would make is that we approve the responses to the three questions in the paper before you, and we forward this paper to the Town Centre Committee for them to consider how they wish to respond to questions 11.10 and 11.11. Do we have a seconder for that? And those in favour of that? That was, I think, Councillor. Given Councillor Pemberton has less connection with that town centre, I'll tell him the second, but that was unanimous as well.
Just a quick question on that. Will the town centre be shown on a boundary map?
Yes. So basically, I'll explain that you'll see it tomorrow morning because it will go out with the agenda. So basically, the map that is in the proposed for the local plan is a very small area. It stops at the edge of the high street, doesn't include Crown Mead, it doesn't include the north of Chapel Street, it misses some other stuff out as well. The map in the Hemingway report is fine for study, but it includes quite a lot of houses which shouldn't be part of that policy. As it happens, when Hemingway was developing its report, the Town Council proposed a map which seems to fit the bill of exactly what's required here. So the map that you will see tomorrow has already been approved by the council for the purpose of submission to Hemingway. So it's not fresh to you. It won't be fresh to you councillors, but it's not fresh to the council. And I think, of course, if anybody has any comments, because that's quite a sensitive thing, then of course it can be modified because it has its origins, and I think it's still present on the parish online, so that it can be modified by officers. That's where I basically cut. It came out as a PDF with the boundary, and I cut the map out, and there's all the put out. So that's what the map would do. There is a map, and it has a specific proposal, and you will see it tomorrow morning. So with that, I think that closes on the matters that we need to consider on agenda item 5. Just to say there that the next item that is the next phase of the schedule is the examination. Yeah. And that will take place over 4 weeks, and I think a total of 10 or 12 days. That's 3 days a week, so that the inspector has time to consider what and document what is heard. And then there are two further weeks of 2 days for spillover in June, June and July. So, but it may be that the inspector might come back and ask specific questions. And for example, he may wish us to explain the rationale for our boundary before we get to the meeting. That's the sort of thing that, and I've actually offered explicitly that we can do that. But if not, I suspect that there will be discussion on a friendly discussion, because I don't think there'll be much. I don't see the reason why anyone would take a strong contrary view to the proposal we've made. But he might want to have clarification at some point. Okay, so that concludes on agenda item 5, planning matters arising since the publication of the agenda. So we move on to Agenda item 7.
I think we do need to ask my colleague to query this because residential access is maintained, but blue light access is not permitted. So we just need to seek some clarification on that.
It may be because it's a through road, so that they're saying that because they may need to close it for short periods in order for to do works, and they would reopen it for residents, but they might not be able to do it quickly enough for blue light access. That's a possibility.
We'll just seek some clarity.
Yes.
But,
Okay, so I think we just need to form that day.
no, they just.
Okay. Okay, so move on to agenda item 7B.
Yes, so this has come forward, it's been on the council wish list for a little while. And I've had some informal conversations with Councillor Pemberton in the past and more recently also with Councillor McCann and Councillor Cole. Our current speed monitoring, we loan a freestanding SID, speed indicator device from West Berkshire Council. It's like built like an A-frame. You set it up by the side of the road. It has to be manned and it can't be out for more than 2 hours. And it has to be at certain times of the day. And there's quite a lot of do's and don'ts around it. I have always been of the opinion that it's ineffective because if you're driving and you see 2 people in high vis stacked at the speed indicator device, you're naturally going to slow down. So the data that it collects, I don't feel is that useful to anybody. And in all the time that I've known it to be used, the reports that come back have all said that there is no issue with speeding wherever it's been placed. So I would like to recommend that we invest in the same sort of devices that West Berkshire Council use, and they are sited on columns and they go up for 2 weeks. So you get a good spread of data that is then passed on to Thames Valley Police or West Berkshire Council as appropriate. And they're just a lot more effective than our current system.
So that's a few questions. So when you say data, is that statistical data rather than logs of the registration numbers?
Yeah, it doesn't log registration.
So it's just for information for future planning rather than for enforcement of individual cases. And if we obtain one, where would it be mounted and by whom?
So we would need to seek permission from West Berkshire Council first. We've been a request that we have permission to site it on X column and X road. Once they've approved it, we would be responsible for putting it up and taking it down and collecting the data. And we would move it around. We get quite regular requests from residents or complaints of speeding vehicles. So we move around on a regular basis.
Councillor
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a good idea. It's something that I think we should be doing. The idea that it's movable, it's not a fixed location, therefore we don't learn where it is and all those usual things. And yeah, definitely, absolutely, we should be. That's the example sort of thing that we can do and we should do. It helps keep our communities safer and it shows our communities that we care for what is happening within and around them. There is one little question in my brain. Would we link it to the other parishes if they want to? Obviously, we would have a circuit and we would have a programme of where we're hanging them around the town, but would it be available to other parishes? And it's £5,000 not unreasonable. We're quite a large town, and some of the other parishes wouldn't be able to afford such equipment. So I think and it's what we would say it's downtime, shall we say, we'd be quite happy. I think we could reasonably let it out and let it there. yeah, not give it away, but let them mend it, if you see what I'm saying.
I think some neighbouring parishes already have them. I think a couple of them were joined together to get them.
Yeah.
I think we could just check they're also solar powered, I guess.
You can get solar or battery or combination.
The point is that they don't require connection to operate.
My point is, they are not averse to letting another people like others in that, getting them as well, but the point that points me.
Yeah.
Are these the smiley face and the sad face? Yes. They are.
Or a number presumably as well.
Yeah, I think they do numbers as well. Yeah, you can get over.
Florida Way would be a great place to start, judging by the deliveries I did.
Councillor Pemberton.
So, I'm in a very rare position of actually disagreeing with what some of councillor plans just said. So, I was just saying, there's elements, that I don't necessarily agree with in terms of the strategy for doing the speeding. We've got that conversation about this previously, but I don't think there's necessarily an issue with the speed indicator device being mounted at a particular location and staying there. Yes, drivers will get to know of its location and slow down. But again, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. If I'm honest with you, I think moving the speed indicator device around, it's probably a drop in the ocean in terms of addressing some of the speed issues that I've seen within the parish. I can think of at least 2 locations in our ward where I would like them cited. So I think if we were going to probably, we would probably need more speed indicators to be able to budget for it. So in terms of the principle, yes, I think it's not a bad idea. But I wonder if there's another way of dealing with the speeding issues in and around Thatcham. So going back to kind of last year, when some of the district members were submitting bids, and the bids, Councillor Brooks and I did raise this as a possible item that you know you could ask the funding for. We didn't manage to actually submit a bid in the end, but it's certainly something that we would be interested in doing next time around, later this year. So look, I'm not going to say no to it, but I just wonder whether there's probably a more strategic approach that we take with West Berkshire Council as well.
So to say, I think that I didn't get time to read it before this meeting, but there are policies both by the police and the council about the citing of these. So I think it might be possible to put these temporary ones in places that don't comply with the criteria for the permanent ones. Because I think permanent ones have to be either in a particular location like a school or as a speed limit change. So there may be some, of course, there may be some flexibility if I don't know what the origin is of the 2-week rule, but there may be flexibility for the West Berkshire Council to reconsider that if it's not imposed from above. But I was going to make one comment. I think that the recommendation of the clerk is that recommend the proposal to Finance and General Purposes Committee. The other question I had is what person would be responsible for managing these?
Our maintenance officer
Right.
would put it up and take it down, and officers that deal with it and manage the data.
So there was one final point that both Mike and myself raised was we should, assuming the decision is to go ahead with this, we should review how that data that is gathered is being used. Because there's not a lot of public gathering data, then nobody looks at it. You see what and that in 6 months' time, we report back on how it's exactly influenced what it's data to use for, because exactly your point, West Berkshire don't know there's an issue. This may be a point that highlights it, etc., and becomes part of the jigsaw of solutions to rather than an actual.
So I was going to propose that we agree with this, subject to a paper giving more details about the budgetary cost and the resource implications when it's presented to FGP.
I was just going to say that, first of all, as far as moving it around is concerned, I think if you have something like that people see on a regular basis, and they realise that
to them, it counts for nothing. Then they tend to get complacent to them. And my second point was with regards to the data. If it's collecting data, but that nobody's using that data.
So it can be used for enforcement, and it can also be used to justify speed limits if we find that because there are
non-hotspots, sure.
the thresholds for speed. I can remember when we managed to attain the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit on the A4 by Worthy. The evidence about the average speed was quite important, or the 85th percentile is the number that they use. Yeah,
I'd add as well, just in the last week, there's been two mobile speed bans out on Broadway, where there's that persistent speed problem.
right.
So that data that gets fed into them, when they're determined to something second best.
So my proposal then is that we agree to this proposal and request that a paper with more details of the cost and the management and the resource implications is presented. And I think also it says one or more. It's say,
I think they're looking for one.
device/S. I think if we're looking for more than one, we need to consider about how we would the intensity of use that we can use complying with the council's policy on this 2 week. Obviously, if the 2 week has a big interval between it, we might not actually be able to put out enough to make it worth having a second or third one. So
Let's have a look.
yeah.
Media principle. Let's get the rule. See how to work.
Yeah. And also be interesting if there are devices that are able to detect a speed of relatively 0 miles an hour in a particular direction for installation on the Broadway. To stop people going, to alert people the fact that they can't go, they shouldn't be turning down the right side of the bollards. The technology ought to be able to do it, it's just whether the products support it. So I think I'll propose that. Can I have a seconder for that? Did we vote on that? I think, yeah. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. To receive traffic management highways, and I think we've just mentioned one, haven't we? Reports of vehicles, particularly lorries, coming into the Broadway from the A4 and taking the unlawful shortcut into the high street by going the wrong way around, going on the right hand side of the central reservation rather than going around the Broadway. Which was the origin of my comment about the devices detecting speeds more than 0 miles per hour.
There's a camera there, I believe. Yeah. You did mention that is quite easy to fix. You just to the lorry number plate.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's an easy. Yeah.
And another suggestion that if that's not feasible, I have another instance which found it quite effective if you know the name of the company to find out the email address of their CEO and send a photograph. Because of course some companies do actually have policies of compliance, and then you can do a contact on the back of the lorry telling if we see you driving. Yeah. So that might be effective if we can.
There would be a time to add onto that with regards to the fact that the high street is one way. If you're coming out of any of the parking spaces behind the buildings, particularly now the new NHS physio, there's nothing opposite there that tells you that it's a one-way street. If you're visiting for the first time and you don't pay attention to the fact that it's one way, you're coming out very easily. The first time myself, and when I very first had to shop there, then before I realised it.
Yeah.
So do we want to contact the council about that point at this time, or should we come back to that?
I can send it through.
So I'm not quite sure. There are rules on signage, and it may not be compliant to put that on private access, but it would be worth flagging that as an issue that has been drawn to our attention, and if it's possible, could they consider it? Thank you for those in that, Councillor Lamb. And if there's no other traffic management highways issues that you wish to draw to our attention, I'm sure there are many that exist, but none for discussion for this meeting. I think that brings us
the end of the agenda. So with that, I close the meeting.
Thank you very much for your attendance. Super.